But I had a moment while I was home, and I stopped and I asked myself, I was like, okay, it's gone. It's gone. There's nothing you can do about that. You can't change that. Now, what do you want? What do you want to do? Do you want this PhD or do you not want this PhD?
Welcome to the Grad School Sucks podcast, where we believe that your life and career after grad school should rock. I'm your host, Matt Carlson, and today I'm talking with my good friend, Dr. Shaquinta Richardson. Shaquinta is a badass of a human being. She's currently a licensed marriage and family therapist practicing out of the state of Texas, and previously she was faculty and clinic director at a master's level therapy program. Shaquinta is also a sought-after life coach who works with high-achieving Black women to develop balance and boundaries, as well as craft routines and mindsets around self-care. Today's episode is pure gold. Shaquinta and I start off talking about how she grew up in poverty and saw education as the way out of bad circumstances. She discusses the trials she faced in getting through grad school and becoming a faculty member, including financial uncertainty and racial discrimination. We chat about why she chose early on to not pursue a career in research and why she decided to start a business around bringing self-care practices to other Black women. Quick note, today's episode does have some swearing in it, including F-bombs. If you've got kids, coworkers, or others around and you don't want them to hear that kind of speech, I suggest you find some headphones. Anyway, I'm so excited to be able to bring you my conversation with Shaquinta today. Be sure to stick around to the very end of the episode to hear Shaquinta's responses to our bonus questions. Without further ado, let's get to the interview. All right, well, let's get started. Thank you so much, Shaquinta, for joining me today. I am pleased to be able to introduce to all the listeners Dr. Shaquinta Richardson from Beyond Achieving. Shaquinta is a life coach for Black women working on issues such as balance, boundaries, self-care, mindset, and confidence. And I'm happy to say that we were cohort mates in our PhD program, friends and colleagues, and so it's good to get to talk to you again.
Yeah.
So, is there anything that I missed in terms of your introduction or how you present yourself now?
No, that's pretty much it. I work primarily with Black women, but not solely Black women. It specifically in high pressure jobs, women who may have been formerly identified as gifted when they were in school, and high achieving now in high pressure roles. So that is my general focus.
Very cool. Awesome. So if we can we start in grad school? So I know you went to a master's program, is that right, before the PhD? Okay, and I did too. And then we met at the PhD. But what made you go into your master's program for counseling or marriage and family therapy? Is that correct?
So, oddly enough, my undergrad was in marketing. So I went into corporate America right out of college, realized fairly quickly that was absolutely not the path for me. And so I had to figure out another path and, started to do some, searching, some researching, some soul searching, just to see what it is that I really wanted to do, and looked at my current role, and the things that I enjoyed the most about what I was doing had nothing to do with my actual role. It was connecting with people. It was building relationships. It was helping others through the transition and the adjustment of being where we were. And so it was a lot of mentorship and counseling, but as a friend and those types of things. And so even when I told my colleagues and friends there that I was going to pursue the master's, they were like, yep, that makes sense. So yeah, it's just really figuring out what it is that I wanted to do. I was really interested in learning about relationships. I didn't as much care about pathology and how the brain works as much as how relationships work. So marriage and family therapy just seemed like the choice. It just oh yeah, of course, this. And it just so happened this was really one of those just kismet moments of the only marriage and family therapy program in my state was in my hometown.
Wow.
And so I was like, yeah. I'm gonna go there. And so I did. I left my big old corporate job that I hated with no plan, no job lined up, and applied to the program and got in for that next semester. So
That's awesome.
that's it.
And so, what was your experience in the program like?
I loved it. It was absolutely amazing. My professors were great during my time there. Um, my classmates, friends that I made while I was in the program, it was just one of those experiences where I was in school, but I was also at home. So I wasn't like away from home and having to adjust to all those things. I would go to school and go hang out with my sister or my friends, whoever, after classes, and work during the day because I also worked full time during my master's. So yeah, it was kind of nice because I just had my apartment. I went to work, I went to school, and hung out when I could, and it was really nice. It was stressful because I was working full time, but yeah, I really enjoyed it. The program was and still is a really really good program.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I'm curious, and this is maybe more of a selfish question for me. What did you feel like? Um, what was your experience of the process of becoming a therapist like?
Hmm. Hmm. Trying to figure out like how to answer this. It was like words that are coming to mind: unfolding, affirming. Um, in a lot of ways, it helped to rebuild some of the parts of myself that had struggled through, family trauma and family issues. Um, yeah, like it broke down some stuff and helped me to understand some things differently than I had previously understood them, and also gave me some awareness and tools to not only be a good therapist, but just a better person, which I think goes hand in hand with each other. So, yeah, it was like deeply, deeply transformative. Try not to
Yeah.
like use the like cliche words, but that's what it is. Shit.
Yeah. No, I hear that. So when during your master's, did you go straight master's to PhD?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when during your master's,
Bachelor's and masters, but I went straight through masters.
okay, when during your master's did you know you wanted to do a PhD?
After the first year, yeah, after the first year, and some of it was my professors telling me that I should. I guess they, saw whatever they saw. Multiple professors suggested that I go on, and because I don't know that I had necessarily had as much thought about it prior to that, but one of my professors, who I later ended up working with, she was in her PhD program, so she actually went to UGA, and graduated from UGA, and she was doing her internship while I was doing the master's. And so, kind of, that was a connection there. And then we had one black professor, and she was an adjunct professor in the program. And she was probably the only person I had met to that point, or yeah, like the only black therapist that I had met to that point that had a PhD. Like of course, I had professors in college that had PhDs, but like the only black professor in the program who had a marriage and family therapy PhD. And so I was like, this is a possibility as well. And then our director of the program also saying, you should think about this. And because they knew that I was doing work with people with disabilities and that I was like passionate about that, I had created like a partnership between my job and the program to be able to provide therapy for people with disabilities. So like I essentially created that partnership that they still have to this day. And so I guess they, saw that passion and knew that there was more to do with that. So yeah, after that I was like, why not?
Yeah. And so what were you like envisioning the PhD would do for you, or what were you envisioning you do after the PhD? No, you just
Honestly,
gone
I
for it.
don't even know at this point because it has changed so much. Like the level of awareness and knowledge that I have about the PhD now, because it's changed so much. I'm like, what the fuck was I thinking? Is it okay with me? Because
That's fine.
it's like, what was I thinking? Because some of it is when you are you grow up poor, you grow up in certain neighborhoods, you grow up in certain, areas, and with experiences, they tell you education is your ticket out. That's how you're going to, get out of poverty. That's how you're going to get out the hood. That's how you're going to get out of these places. And I bought into that. I absolutely bought into that of, okay, I'm not athletic. I can't sing. I can't dance. I got academics, so I'm gonna do it. That's gonna be my ticket out. And so it's like, I need to get my PhD. I don't know what this actually means. I knew professors because I've been in college. That is the extent. I didn't really understand and grasp, oh, a PhD is a research degree. People said it, but I didn't know what that meant. I didn't really know what they were saying. I heard the words, but I didn't have context for them. And so honestly, I don't know what I thought it was going to do for me, but it didn't do what I.
Right. Right. Okay. So you applied. Did you apply only to UGA?
I applied only to UGA.
I remember you saying that. Yeah.
Because I was also of the mind, like, if I'm going to do this, because I did know it was going to be hard. That was one thing when people said that, like, I took that and I knew it was going to be hard. And so I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it at the place where I want to be so that I can be near my family. And because also I found out my sister was pregnant during the process of, no, I found out she was pregnant before I even applied, I think. So I know I wanted to be close by. I had godchildren that didn't know me that well because I was away, in other places when they were, getting older. And I didn't want that for my niece at the time. So I knew that if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to do it at a place that I want to be, where I can get back to my family. I liked that program. I had, looked at the professors and stuff. And because I had like 6, 7 different schools that I had looked at, but none of them spoke to me like UGA did. So I'm not going to apply to places I know I don't want to be at. I'm just not doing that. And I would be okay with not getting in at all and not pursuing this if that was my path. So it's either this or go straight into the workforce.
Yeah. So you got into UGA, and then you moved to Athens. We all met. We started classes. What was that transition like? That process?
It was interesting. So I don't even know how much of this but I went early because I needed, I went to school. I started that summer before our actual program started. So I came and I took some classes just so I could get the refund to be able to help with my bills, because I didn't have enough money to make the transition. So I came early for the sole purpose of getting a refund check to be able to function financially. Because I also had to finish my master's program, because at that time we graduated in July, not in May, in my master's program. So there was that overlap in the summer. But because of some ways of financial aid, the way that my aid would work in my master's program, the cutoff and the timing didn't work out for me to be able to get the financial aid to take me through the summer. So I had to start UGA early. I don't know if that made sense, but
yeah.
So I went there. I got connected with Matrona over the summer. So got to hang out with some people during the summer, made some connections, met some other people, met Megan, some other people in the department. And yeah, the summer was cool. Like it was cool. It was fine. I had everything I needed done for my master's program. And so it was just waiting for graduation and then waiting to start our program officially in the fall. So that summer, smooth sailing. That semester came, met all y'all, and that was cool. Large cohorts, okay, this is different, whatever. But then, yeah, like I said, I don't know how much you know about this, but the first semester was extremely rough for me financially. And so I had the financial strain on me and I don't even remember what it was like academically, like for the most part, because that was my biggest stressor. But I do remember being in our class, in one of our classes, and getting so pissed off because we were talking about something, and the professor, white male professor, was talking about how certain, behaviors are the reason why Black men are in prison. And do you remember this at all? This was first semester. And yeah, the conversation essentially, the connection that was being made was because of corporal punishment, that's why Black men are in prison. Because they're violent.
Okay. I don't remember.
Yeah, and it was a whole thing, and got into discussions in class. It was a few of us, it was all of us in our cohort in the class. And one of our classmates, she's with me. She understood the historical context and all these different things. But it was like, well, violence begets violence. It's like, y'all are missing a lot of nuance here, like a whole lot of stuff. But because I couldn't back it up with like data in that very moment, what I was saying was being dismissed. And I was like, oh, this is what we're doing. This is what research does. Oh, okay. And so from then on, I'm like, fuck these numbers. This is bullshit. They have no context. They have like the samples are skewed. Like y'all are sampling men in prison, but these same behaviors, these same experiences happen to men in college, but y'all aren't looking at that. So I'm just like, yeah, so we can problematize one particular thing, but the conclusions that were being drawn were just ridiculous. So that completely shifted like my my perspective of research and how I felt about research. But so that was that part of like having in-class experiences. But then outside of class, I was literally losing everything. Everything that I had worked for over the past, couple of years, rebuilding myself after leaving my corporate job. I lost my car. I had to move out of my apartment. I wasn't able to pay any of my bills. I was not financially prepared for this transition to a PhD program. And people, like, even though our tuition was paid, our expenses were not. And I had the lowest paying assistantship in the department. And so, yeah, like I struggled significantly that first semester just trying to pay my bills. So I had to move out of my apartment in like November of that semester, November, December of that semester, maybe even October. I don't know. I can't remember the timeline. And had to sell a bunch of stuff, like, and move into a 4-bedroom apartment with like 3 other undergrads or some shit. It was not fun.
I don't think I knew any of that.
Yeah. And like, my couple, like, Gail knew, like, a few professors knew what was going on and they did what they could to help. So I do appreciate that. Like, they actually rallied and did what they could to help, like, come up with a plan. They set me up with one of the professors in the financial department to come up with a plan of action to at least get me stabilized. And then, yeah, that was my first semester.
First semester, jeez.
Yeah, fun.
Wow. Okay, well, what happened next?
Yeah, and then so after that, we were on winter break. Ended the semester, did fine. Got through the classes, all that good stuff. And then I had a moment over the break where, cause I was gonna leave. I was gone. I was like, I lost all my stuff. I hate this. These people racist. I don't like it. I'm out. I had applied to like 40 jobs, like 40 different, like, that might be an exaggeration, but it was at least 20 mental health jobs. I had applied to a bunch of jobs. I was out. I was gone. I had, connected with some of my friends from my master's program, trying to get to connect to the jobs that they were in. But I had a moment while I was home, and I stopped and I asked myself, I was like, okay, it's gone. It's gone. There's nothing you can do about that. You can't change that. Now, what do you want? What do you want to do? Do you want this PhD or do you not want this PhD? And it's like, you know what? All right, that's behind me. I want this PhD. I've started this and I want to see it through, but I'm going to do it my way. And that was literally, I remember that very vividly. And I was like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to continue to do it my way. Fuck what these people talking about. I'm not listening to your biased ass research that you swear up and down is unbiased bullshit. No, it's not. Yeah, I'm going to do this my way. And that is literally what I did.
Yeah.
So the next few years were great. So, because y'all were publishing y'all asses off, y'all were doing all this research for hours and hours and hours. I was like, no, I'm not doing that. Because first of all, y'all are paying me shit. I'm over here eating ramen noodles and soup and shit on a regular basis, and you think you're gonna get all of my time and energy? I'm not doing that. I'm going home this weekend. Oh, I got something big to do. I'll get it done. It'll get done. But I'm going home this weekend. I'm going to see my niece. Going to see my sister. I'm going to whatever event this is, and y'all can work on that. So
I do seem to remember. I remember you seemed stressed your first year, and I felt like I viewed that from afar because I don't think we had hung out maybe that much that first year. And then it seemed like the further you got in the program, like the happier you got. Which I think for some other people it was the opposite.
Yep, that is it. Literally, yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Because I just wasn't. I had gotten to the point I was like, if this doesn't happen, like if I leave this program, I'm gonna be fine. I've been broke. I've already lost everything, and I'm still here. So if this doesn't work out, I need to leave this program. I'll go find a job. It won't be hard. It will not be hard for me to find a place to make money and sustain myself if this PhD doesn't work out. I don't want to do research. I don't even necessarily want to teach. And so at this point, I'm doing this to give myself some kind of like leg up credential wise. But if this doesn't work out, it is not the end of the world for me.
Right. And just for context for any listeners that don't know, as marriage and family therapists, the master's degree is the terminal degree. So we didn't have to get a PhD to practice. Maybe it helped, boosted what you could make by 15% or something. But it's not like psych where you got to go for the full PhD to practice.
Exactly.
So, and as an aside, do you need to hop off at the top of the hour?
Not necessarily.
Flexible.
Might get hungry.
Okay. Show off for sure. Okay. I'm just trying to time manage. Okay, very cool. So first year was a struggle. I am sorry to hear all of that. I did not know all of that coming in. But things got better going through. You had a so how did you I guess what I'm trying to get is how does your view of your career and what you wanted to do after the program, whether or not you finished, how did that evolve through your journey in the PhD program?
Yeah, it became more of an experience and just a learning process. I stopped looking at the PhD as like my ticket out, or as like even a next step to this ideal role in my career. I didn't even have that. I started looking at it as I'm going to get all of the experiences that I can, figure out learn, understand more deeply about this world and people, relationships. So the extent of research, if you will, was not to become a tenure track research professor. It was to have a deeper understanding of this world and people and how we work and relationships and all those things. And my particular research focus was from a critical lens. So really being able to look at this world from a critical lens. So that is what I started to focus on. And if you remember, part of my journey was going to getting to do presentations in Australia. I did a summer research thing in South Africa, and these were all things I was I want to do this, so I'm gonna figure out how to make it work. And that's what I did. That was how I got to do some of my first overseas traveling. That was how I did my first overseas traveling, and yeah,
that's awesome.
So
So let's say you're starting your dissertation. It was your 5th year. I think. Did you start dissertating?
Started it in my 4th year.
Oh, wow. I started it late. So you started in your 4th year, and then so while you're dissertating, what's kind of your view on job applications? Like the kind of like what's around the corner?
So I knew I didn't want to be. So okay, so I'm gonna back up for a second. I have always said I didn't want to be a teacher. Like my entire life, I was like, I don't ever want to be a teacher. And so the fact that I even went into teaching was kind of like, what you doing, yeah? But I did enjoy it. But I didn't apply to any R1 positions. Everything that I applied to, for the most part, was like teaching universities. Because I didn't want to. I did not. I was not interested in the publish or perish lifestyle. Like I'm not here for it. I honestly don't like writing. I can't stand it. And so I knew that if I was going to go into academia, which I was, it needed to be a teaching university. And so that's all I applied to and ended up at my master's alma mater.
And that's awesome. And so how is that transition into that role after getting a PhD?
It was really good. For a bunch of different reasons. So like part of my work now is like as a coach, part of my work is focusing on like the whole life, not just the career, and how the career fits into that, and making all these things work together in harmony. And so that transition was really good because again, I'm back at home with my family. I now have a niece and a nephew who adore me, and I adore them. And other family members or other friends had finished their degrees and some had come back home. So it was an opportunity to be able to like just be with my people again, and then working at a program that I loved and like really believed in with people that I really enjoyed working with. A lot of the professors and supervisors and people that were there when I was in the program were still there. And so I already had relationships with them. They love me. I love them. So it was a very unique kind of journey. But again, I have been very intentional about doing things that feel good to me along the journey and building relationships that feel good. And that absolutely impacted how I was able to move post degree. It wasn't, these difficult transitions, because I just kind of did what I wanted. Yeah, and I just didn't have a lot of fear about, like a lot of fear and angst about making these types of decisions. Well, what if you do this, you'll get pigeonholed into this, and I don't want that shit anyway. Somebody else told me that's what I'm supposed to want, and so it's very easy for me to make those kind of decisions and say this is what I want, and so I'm gonna go that way. So it was a beautiful transition to answer the question.
That's awesome. And so you were there for, was it a year, 2 years?
2 years. I was there for 2 years. Now it was a rocky 2 years because of students. I'm just gonna be real about it. I had some amazing students. I had some amazing students, and I had some issues with students that weren't amazing at all. Like there were, I still to this day, I'm like, y'all are grown ass people, and the amount of pushback for simple shit that I would get was ridiculous. And there were other pieces of this. I was the first Black grad school professor at the college, but I was the only full-time Black professor at the entire college when I started. And so that like there was that dynamic. Like they hadn't had a full-time Black professor in 33 years.
Really?
In
What
33 years.
was that a HBCU?
No.
No, okay. I thought it was for some reason.
No, this master's program, they had their first Black professor in like the 80s, who happened to be my cousin, like down the line. Small cities, but
Right.
yeah, I was the first full-time professor because they had adjuncts, of course, but in 33 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was another little piece that, I had to navigate. Students weren't used to having a Black professor. And I remember when I was in the program, the Black professor that they had, like they gave her hell. Like my classmates gave her hell because it was she's so aggressive. She's so intimidating. She's so scary. I'm like, what the fuck are y'all seeing?
Right.
And so I got some of that same stuff. I had one student write me this whole letter about how I was terrorizing her and making her home feel unsafe at the clinic. And I'm like, first of all, I'm your clinical director and you're breaking rules. So I'm going to bring that to your attention. But she had this whole tirade about like how I was terrorizing her and all this stuff. So I had a lot of issues with students, but I had some amazing students at the same time in those 2 years. Absolutely amazing students. So I don't regret any of that. I'm glad I did it, but I'm also glad I'm not doing it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. So when did you know in that process that you wanted to jump to the next thing professionally?
Honestly, once I met my wife and knew that I wasn't gonna be staying here, staying there, I should say. Quite frankly, there is a possibility that if I'd never met my wife, my now wife, that I could have still been teaching there. Because I didn't hate it.
Yeah.
I didn't hate it. I enjoyed it for the most part. I just, it came with other shit, which most positions do. But I very possibly could have still been there. But once I had that, like, oh, I can get out of here. Like, oh, what else can I do? What else do I want to do? I'd already started my private practice, so I knew that I could make money. It's like I did that while I was also teaching, because professors at teaching universities don't make a whole lot of money, which is part of that like myth of it being any kind of ticket out. But so I was doing that and had my private practice, so I knew that I could make money as a private practice owner, and I knew that I could make probably 2 to 3 times as much as I was making as a professor. So it's like, I'm out of here.
Yeah. So and then after you met your wife's name is Kim, right?
Mm-hmm.
After you met Kim, excuse me, you moved to Texas. Wait, when did that happen?
June 2020, at the end of my second year of teaching. So I had already planned to leave. I was planning to leave in August of 2020 after the end of because our school, so their school semester ends in July, or school program ends in July. And so I was going to leave in August, but the pandemic hit in March. And so everything shut down, everything went online. And at that point, I was like, why wait till August if I'm working remotely anyway? Right. And so I went ahead and moved in June and taught. I did adjunct through the summer. Yeah, I adjunct through the summer for like supervision and other stuff. Maybe one other class. I think that might have been the only class. And then went back for their graduation, and then I was done at the end of July.
Yeah. And so you basically had to restart your practice too, right? Moving
Nope.
states?
Nope.
Oh, because were you doing a remote?
Virtual. That's the other part of it. I didn't have to change anything. So I had already started doing a little bit of telehealth. Like I had maybe one, 2 clients I was doing telehealth with already in my private practice. And so I had to shift everybody to online. But and like maybe only a couple didn't come because they didn't want to do online, but not everybody got to do it. But then, so yeah, I was able to continue my practice. I didn't have any interruptions, and my practice is still active in South Carolina. It's primarily active in South Carolina. I have my Texas license, but the majority of my client load is still in South Carolina. So that was actually a benefit more than anything.
Very cool. And so when did you start the Beyond Achieving, start getting into life coaching, that kind of thing?
So that actually happened before I left as well. So that actually started in South Carolina too. But it started in like April. So the pandemic had just hit. It had just started. And I had done a group coaching program to get started with it. So I have a friend of mine who was also a coach who introduced the idea and was kind of helping me get started. So I started that like end of March and like launched my first program in April of 2020. And so I had already had my practice for a year at that point. and then introduced coaching a year later. And yeah, it's been, yeah, active since then.
So what attracted you to coaching as opposed to just continue to do traditional psychotherapy, which I know you still do as well?
So what I was noticing, even in therapy, a lot of the clients that I was seeing in therapy, they were coming, it was a lot of Black women in my private therapy practice, because I was also still doing a fellowship at a community clinic. But on the private practice side, a lot of the clients were Black women who were quote unquote high achieving Black women in these, great jobs, experiencing a lot of stress and burnout, but feeling, overwhelmed, like they can't, take breaks, they can't take any time off, they can't do any of the things that is clear that they need. And so I started to look at that more closely and recognize that this is a specific need that not that these clients don't need therapy, but there is a specific way of thinking and a specific like process that's happening that I wanted to be able to focus on, like I wanted to specifically be able to focus on. So that's how I was like seeing the need through my therapy practice, but therapy wasn't able to address all of the things that were happening. So yeah, I started thinking about like, how can I help these women? What can I offer? What can I do? And coaching was the natural answer to that. And so I started with self-care coaching and really helping Black women specifically develop like self-care regimens and practices, strategies, systems to kind of shift how they're using their time, addressing different like mindset barriers and things that like ways that they're thinking about. Because like you've heard this before of how we're always told we have to work twice as hard to get half as much. And that is so deeply ingrained in the like just in the fabric of our bodies and our minds that it leads to some very harmful practices in like decision making and fear-based types of decision making within like and among Black women. So yeah, I just wanted to address that specific issue. Perfectionism is another big part of that. Lack of boundaries is another big part of that. And so yeah, I wanted to be able to address that specific thing without honestly like the limits of therapy. Like there's some things that I couldn't do as a therapist that I can do as a coach. And I am still very clear and specific. Like if I see clients need therapy, a lot of my clients work with a therapist as well to address, those mental health issues. But yeah, there was a specific need to focus on these things that therapy wasn't addressing.
Absolutely. And so I've followed your content for, I don't know, year, 2 years maybe. And it seems like self-care is one of these big themes that comes up and you focus on. And I remember when we were grad students, you had some very intentional like self-care practices and you would talk about them. And I don't think I'd ever thought to think about self-care like intentionally as a thing. And so what has self-care meant to you, not just like recently with the coaching, but just kind of like across your life? What does self-care stand for?
And thank you for bringing that back to my awareness, because I know that I've been doing this work like with myself for a long time, and I'm very it's very important to me that I practice what I preach, and that I'm not just saying things because they sound good or regurgitating what somebody else has said on the internet. So thank you for bringing that because I really have been practicing this and like developing these processes for a long time. And I can't even tell you how the concept of self-care got introduced to me, because I don't even know if it was, it wasn't a thing then. Like self-care wasn't this big term or concept then. And so what it has meant to me is just simply taking care of myself, and not in these, social media ways or just like, buzzword ways of, yes, I'm making sure that I'm, getting my bubble bath and doing my pampering, which are all important. Like those things are absolutely important. But it's taking care of myself and treating myself like I actually matter. Like I am a human being who has needs, who is not supposed to work like a machine, like a slave, like I don't have limits. And so it has very much meant paying attention to my body and not letting the external world and quite frankly capitalism tell me that I have to kill myself for somebody else's benefit. Because that's a lot of times that's what it is.
Yeah. It may sound naive, but when grad school, when I would hear you talk about it and I would see you do things and set limits to protect yourself, I don't know. I saw that as so kind of like foreign or like unneeded, and I had a big ass ego then. Not that I don't now, but uh, I think I was also just so aware of the detriment of like over time just running yourself at 100% or whatever percent I was doing, unaware of what the toll that would take psychologically and physically, which I ran into a couple years later.
Yeah, and I'll be real with you. I would look at you, I'll be like, "Is he okay?"
Yeah, I don't. I probably wasn't.
Oh, no, it was pretty clear.
Yeah.
Like you were functioning, you were doing it, but it was absolutely clear. Like, and it wasn't just you. Like that was the expectation.
Yeah, it felt like the culture. Yeah, and I think, I mean, I enjoyed it. I have my own demons I was running from by like, burning a candle at both ends. But I think there was definitely a cultural element to it, and not cultural, a culture element. And yeah, I right after we had Leroy, my son, I could feel this like almost like a screen or something that I've been seeing life through kind of lifted up, and I was like, oh fuck, working 60 hours a week, and all this, the recognition for research, like what does this actually, like what value does this have?
Yep.
I feel like it's it's like fool's gold or something. But anyway, you saw it so much far in advance, and it was so fun watching you from afar. Anyway, I don't know where I was going with that, but self-care. So you've been doing retreats now, is that right? Was that the first retreat you just had?
No, this was the second one. I did one last September as well. Yeah. And I mean, honestly, I am building this whole just vision and structure and foundation of creating space for Black women and all Black women, all kinds of Black women, because I will say there's also been this just perception that this idea of like luxury and soft life, these buzzwords that are coming out, you only see it in like a specific kind of Black woman. And we don't talk about that a lot, but it very much is. And my whole point has always been self-care ain't got to cost money. It's not something you do once. It's not for people who only have the privilege of it. No, we all, as human beings, have a fundamental right to actually give a fuck about ourselves and do something about it. And so, yeah, I'm really trying to create this entire, movement of like all Black women knowing that we can reserve something for ourselves. And the number of people, and I do recognize, let me just put this disclaimer out there, somebody gonna have something to say about it, that this isn't just Black women. Like, of course, like other people are overworked, other people are stressed out. And Black women are often the most marginalized and the most exploited among us. And so that's where my focus is. And the number of times I've heard people say, like, I've either never had a vacation or I haven't had a vacation in 10 years. I haven't taken any days off in X, Y, and Z. Don't even know what it looks like. Don't even know how it feels to sit down and take a break. Like it's disheartening. And we look at our grandmothers, we look at our grandparents, and just how run down they are, just how beat down they've been by life. And I'm like, I'm not doing this shit. I'm not doing it. Like, that does not have to be our futures. And so that is what I'm working towards, a future where we can actually get to our, older years, our later years, and just not be so beat down by life. Because life is going to do plenty of that on its own, but we absolutely, sometimes, like, we just accept it, and we don't have to. We
Yeah.
just don't have to.
Yeah, it almost feels like it's your coaching is almost like a process of like socializing these professionals into a new mindset versus, therapy is maybe more like a clinical, you have like, something, what would you call it, a symptom, and we're going to like treat a symptom or try to find, something for it. And this seems more like all encompassing.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It can't just be one thing. Like, we're talking about people, like, their entire life. Like, people think that it's just work. Like, if I can get work together, then da 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 da. No, like, we got to look at all the pieces. Like, that's where my systems thinking comes in.
Yeah.
These things all work together, and so if we're just focusing on one, then we're missing other parts, and they're like, the system's gonna just recalibrate, and the other pieces are gonna override. So no, we gotta focus on all these things. We gotta work on the core of who you are, so that starts to like spill out into other areas of your life. So yeah, that's why it is very much looking at the full picture, and reshifting how we just engage with ourselves in this world around us.
That's awesome. And so you've got, in terms of specific ways of working with you, you've got the retreats and then like an extended like one-on-one program. Is that right?
Yeah, so my main way of working is through my one-on-one coaching. So I have two different ways that people can work with me. It's either on like a monthly retainer. It used to be like a 12-week program, but I noticed that people were extending their time, wanting to continue working. So I make it's a 12-week, it's a monthly retainer that has a minimum of 3 months. So because that's the other thing, I don't do ad hoc sessions. I don't do one-on-ones or like one-off sessions anymore, because I'm trying to create meaningful, sustainable change over time. And yeah, that's just a personal choice that I've made. So people can work with me for a minimum of 3 months, or they can do my 6-month experience, which is as specific, like we lay out a specific plan and work through that plan, the individualized, personalized plan over the 6 months. It includes me actually coming to their location and doing some in-person things as well. And that's, I would say now, more people are choosing to do that than the monthly retainer, just because it is so focused. And so, just intentional about, in the 6 months, we're going to work on this, and this. We're going to transform these areas of your life, and here's how we're going to do it.
Very cool. And so before we transition to the last part of our conversation, how can people learn more or follow you? Where would you direct people to?
So primarily, I would direct you to my Instagram to engage with me more. It's Dr. Shaquinta, Dr. Shaquinta on Instagram. I do, some lives and things like that. One of the things I do is called Monday Morning Mindset, where I go live and we just kind of, prepare for our week, prepare for our weeks mentally, get intentional about our weeks, take back some agency over our time and our days, set us up for a positive experience, because so much of our lives is just going with the flow. But nah, I get to determine how I want to experience my day. I'm not just gonna roll with the punches. Sometimes you have to, but if you're already creating that bank of joy and fun and care and all those things, when those moments come, you're a lot more prepared for them. So that's one thing. I post a lot. I have a newsletter that you can sign up on as well on my Instagram. So I do a monthly newsletter, and sometimes, throughout the month as well, sharing other tips and tricks, details, stories, those kinds of things. My website is www.beyondachieving.com, which has more information about my services. So Instagram, Dr. Shaquinta, www.beyondachieving.com.
Awesome. And so this is a great transition. And this is a question that I had for me, but I'm sure the listeners will be interested to hear. Your Instagram is like picture perfect. Like, I look at these pictures and everything, and I'm like, I could not take these pictures of myself. Do you have someone helping you either on the photo side or the posting side or anything like that? Okay, can you tell us a little bit about the insides of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't take most of these pictures of myself. Some of them I do. So I do a combination of just like everyday photos, like whenever I'm out doing something or in house doing something. So some of them are, just either I take them or my wife takes them. But I do a photo shoot every 3 to 6 months just to have fresh photos to post. Because quite frankly, I don't like social media like that. I don't like doing the social media marketing. So I like to have my photos ready to go, so I don't have to worry about, do I have on the right outfit today? Do I, is my hair whatever? I don't want to have to worry about that all the time. So I have my photos, and I like to keep them fresh on my website and stuff too. I do a photo shoot with a photographer here in Houston. Their name is Jess, of We the Romantics. So all of my photos, pretty much all the photos you see, like the professional looking photos, are from Jess at We the Romantics. They are amazing, absolutely amazing. And then of the rest posting, like I have a designer on retainer, and so anytime I need something designed, they design it for me. So they update my website, any graphics, they do that kind of stuff for me. So no, I don't have that eye.
Yeah. So okay, so I'm trying to imagine our audience is, mostly another old man cough. Mostly folks in grad school. They're looking ahead to their career, just based on the research I've looked at, 50 to 70% were probably thinking they're going into academia. A couple years in, that's dropped probably in half. And so they're looking at their academic options, their industry options, W-2 job at a business. And I think some percentage of them are definitely thinking about trying to be an entrepreneur, putting out a shingle, selling some kind of service, maybe a product, probably a fair amount of some kind of a service associated with their training that they did in academia. So what advice, what would you tell people who are thinking about stepping a toe in the water, trying to get something out there? What should people be thinking about in terms of building a business off of their expertise?
Figure out what it is you want to do and why, and go for it. Like, don't let anything that's just like, I can't do this, or this doesn't make sense, or whatever the case. Like, just put it out there. If you have something that you think will help people, then share it. Let people see what it is that you have to offer and decide whether they want it or not. You show the value in it, whatever it is. Help people understand why it is important, why they need to do whatever it is, and go do the thing. That is what anybody has done. All this shit is made up. All of it's made up. All of it is made up. All of it. Make some shit up, put it out there, and do your thing. Like, most of the time when things don't work out for people, it's because they gave up. Now, there's a very small percentage of things that, like, nobody need that, or this don't make no sense, but people pay for the weirdest shit. Like, so, like, just do it. And don't let your fears and your doubts and those inner critics tell you that you can't do something. If it's something you want to do, if it's an idea you have, it's a way you want to help people, figure out how to put it in front of the people who need to see it, and do it.
Mm.
That's it.
All right. Well, that answers it. I'm going to start that Foot Finder account.
Do it.
Kidding.
Look, I'm here for it. Do whatever you need. Because the reality is, like, so much of what we have decided we want is because somebody told us that that's the path that we should take.
Mm-hmm.
But then we get there and we're like, why isn't this working out? It's because it's somebody else's path that they either did take or didn't even take, and they told you to do it. No, learn to listen to yourself. Learn to figure out what it is that you want, and that takes like giving yourself actually space to listen. So many, like, I understand, some of us have things that come up when we sit in those quiet moments that feel uncomfortable and we don't like it. But if you can sit through that discomfort long enough to actually get to your voice, that is what makes all the difference to being able to make decisions with clarity, decisions that feel in alignment with who you are and what you want, and you aren't left feeling so much resentment and stress and strife and struggle because it's not you.
Mm-hmm.
But that takes courage.
It's true. It's very true. So, what would you say to grad student Shaquinta if you could go back? If she's worried about her career, worried about her future, would you give her wisdom? What would you do?
Quite frankly, I tell her, keep going.
Yeah.
You were doing it. What you thinking, how you thinking, you are on the right track. Keep going. Like, I don't regret a single thing. I look back, there's not a single thing that I would want to, I mean, of course, like something small maybe, but there's not anything that I would want to have done differently. I remember one day in class, we had some class, and I was just fed the fuck up. I was tired. I was stressed out. I had some other stuff going on, and I just walked out of one of our classes. I just walked out in the middle. And even that, like, the professor called me afterwards, and I was like, I ain't got nothing for you. I have nothing for you. I'm not going to try to make up no shit, no explanation. I called somebody, said, come get me. I can't stay here. And I just left class, and I went home. And I don't regret those types of things, those ways of listening to what I needed in any particular moment, because those ways that I showed love to myself, because I have to take myself through all of these experiences. I have to take myself through the next role and the next role and the next role. And ain't nobody else gonna make sure I'm okay if I don't make sure I'm okay. So just remember that, like, we sacrifice so much of ourselves for whatever, and it rarely returns the dividends that we think it does.
Yeah. So what would you say to grad students right now who are looking at their career options moving forward? They're weighing, like I said before, academia, industry, maybe some side hustle or a business they want to start. Do you have any advice for them in terms of navigating the next year or two of their career?
If something doesn't feel right, if something doesn't settle in your spirit, you're like, I don't want to do this, but I have to. No, you don't. No, you don't. And unless, like, now take care of yourself. Make sure that your basic needs are met. That hierarchy of needs here. But don't do something just because you feel like you feel pressure from somebody to do it. You feel like that's what they expect of you, or whatever the case. If there's something that you want to do that isn't in alignment with that, then figure out how to make that happen. Disappoint people. Nobody ever died from disappointment. They will get over it, but you might not. So, or you might take you a little longer because you got to deal with the everyday of whatever decision you're making. Let them be disappointed. So yeah, so you just don't do anything that doesn't feel like you truly want to be there.
Yeah.
You go for the things that you do.
I could have saved myself some bruises if I would have known that back then.
Should have talked to me.
Should have talked to you more. All right, Shaquinta. There anything else on your mind you want to share? Any closing thoughts or plugs you want to give?
For the grad students, just relax. just allow yourself to not take it all so seriously. I know it, like everything feels so like high stakes when you're in the weeds of it. Feels like so much pressure to crank, do. Release yourself of some of that pressure. You're still going to get there. If you still want to get there, you're still going to get there. Because the reality is, and love you, Matt, but I got the same places they did doing it the way that I wanted to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I think I graduated sooner, didn't I?
Probably. Making more money too.
I think it did, yes. So don't be afraid to walk your own path. Seriously, like don't be afraid to walk your own path because I promise you it will be that much more worth it. You can say, you know what, I did this and I'm actually a whole person on the other side of it.
Well said. Wise words. Well, Shaquinta, I am so glad that we met in grad school. I'm so glad we are friends.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you came on here and talked. It was great chatting with you.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
Of course, I'm sure we'll do it again sometime.
Yeah.
All right, final plugs. All right, so on Instagram, it's Dr. Shaquinta, and your website is www.beyondachieving.com. You've got coaching. Do you have a retreat coming up? Another retreat schedule?
So, what I didn't say about the retreat is typically for my clients only.
Oh, for sure.
So they're not open retreat. So yeah, they're just for my clients.
Yeah. Hey, that's awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming, Shaquinta. I'll talk to you next time.
All right.
All right. Bye.
Folks, thank you for listening to the Grad School Sucks podcast, where we believe that your life and career after grad school should rock. I loved getting to catch up with Shaquinta for this episode today. She endured many trials to create a satisfying career that she has now, and it is someone that I really admire. I hope you got a lot of inspiration and insight out of today's episode. May it help you on your own journey through grad school and beyond. Be sure to follow Shaquinta on Instagram at Dr. Shaquinta and check out her website at beyondachieving.com. If you did end up enjoying today's episode, please like and subscribe, leave a comment, and write a review. If you know someone who could benefit from listening to this podcast, consider sending them today's episode and let them know why they should check it out. And if you're listening to today's episode and not watching it, you can try out the video version of our podcast on our YouTube channel. Do you know someone who you think should be interviewed on the show? If you do, or you generally want to get in contact to say hello, you can shoot me an email at matt@gradschoolsucks.com. Again, that's matt@gradschoolsucks.com. Lastly, if you've been loving the soundtrack that plays at the beginning and end of our podcast episodes, well, that makes two of us. The musician who crafted this tune is a highly streamed lo-fi artist named Ocha. He has several albums of instrumental lo-fi and electronic music that's perfect for study sessions. You can find him on Spotify under the name Ocha, that's O-C-H-A. Go check him out next time you need some music in the background. As always, I'm your host, Matt Carlson, and I look forward to bringing you another great episode next week. See you then, grad students.
So, Shaquinta, what is your superpower?
My superpower. So the funny thing is, I've actually thought about this before, and the answer keeps changing. So I think my superpower is the ability to see through the fog, to see through the bullshit, to see through whatever is presented and make sense of like what is beyond that. So a little bit of, I don't know.
Love it.
I don't know. Well,
Love it.
Vision. We'll call it. Yeah.
If you could be an animal, what animal would you be?
Ooh. Okay. My old answer to this used to be a white tiger, a white Bengal tiger, hands down, just because they were beautiful and really powerful. And yes, but honestly, like really, I like to be a dog in a bougie household.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I hear that.
Getting all the good food.
Good life.
The snuggles, good life. Days in the sun. Mm-hmm. I want to be a well taken care of little puppy, little dog.
Love it. All right, last softball. If you could retire anywhere in the world, where would you want to retire?
Ooh. That's hard. Probably Mexico.
Mexico. Why
Yeah.
Mexico?
It's the place that I've been the most and have enjoyed the most, and feel like there's a lot of just food, sun, beaches, the vibes, like top notch.
Very cool. Very cool. All right.